Cosmic horror and the apocalypse are concepts that sound perfect for each other. But what kind of unholy horrors would arise if the two were ever combined? In this video, we'll be going through some of my favorite cosmic horror movies and break down the apocalyptic events that they usher in. You see, many people think that the apocalypse is a singular event. Some even call it Doomsday or D-Day, like it all goes down in one day. But in reality, the end of the world is a process. We just don't always see the warning signs. Whether you're a part of society or just drifting far enough to observe it, there's always this sense of comfort and normalcy that we get from everyday life. But that's exactly why it's the perfect time for the apocalypse to start. In John Carpenter's cosmic horror film In the Mouth of Madness, we get to see this unravel perfectly. There, we follow John Trent, an insurance investigator with his feet firmly rooted on the ground. After a successful investigation, he gets offered the case to locate the prized author, Sutter Kane, an amalgam of Stephen King and H.P. Lovecraft in this world. However, right before he even accepts his case, that sense of normalcy is immediately broken as an axe-wielding man with misshapen pupils attacks him. He survives the attack, but is propelled by the thrill to accept the case. There was nothing normal about the attacker. Not the timing, not the place, not the man. That's why just by this scene, we immediately leave that sense of comfort behind. But the real twist here is that this isn't even the opening scene of the movie. The opening scene is a paradox. In it, we see Trent being dragged into the white padded cell of a mental health institution, seemingly determined to break free. It's only when a doctor arrives to examine him that they discover that he actually wants to be inside that cell. When they ask him why, he only responds that it's safer there. As they go on with their session, this is the time that we jump back to him being offered the case. So it's a story within a story. This not only takes away that sense of normalcy and comfort for Trent, but for the audience as well. That thing that grounded us and gave us some sort of reference point for how things should be, it's gone now. But now that we got the rug pulled from under us, what happens next? When that sense of normalcy gets disrupted, most of the time, our first reaction is to fix it. In order to fix it, we need to take control of the situation. That's something the movie The Cabin in the Woods captures perfectly. In it, we follow a gang of 5 teenagers going out to have a weekend off in a cabin that one of their cousins lent them. Unbeknownst to them, each and every moment they experience was carefully being orchestrated by an organization called the Puppeteers. In one of the most iconic scenes of the movie, the gang enters the basement of the cabin where they find it full of strange and frankly creepy items. If you're watching this video and you find one of these things familiar, then this channel is for you. Please like and please subscribe. Anyway, with everything in that basement feeling wrong, one of them begs the others not to touch anything. But when a disembodied voice that only he can hear tells the others to continue, one of them starts reading a Latin spell from one of the books there. This awakens a family of brutal zombies that then hunts them one by one. This is where they experience the second step in a series of events that will ultimately lead to the apocalypse: loss of control. Now, at first we are led to believe that each of the 5 characters embody an archetype from horror movies. But as the fool explains, everyone is acting out of character, almost like they're just playing a part. We can attribute this to the machinations of the puppeteers, who have exposed a group of friends to various chemicals and stimuli that will influence their actions. This is because they have to die in a certain order. The first being the whore, second the athlete, third the scholar, fourth the fool, and the last is the virgin. True to their name, the puppeteers have made them puppets in a show to appease the Ancient Ones. The Ancient Ones are eldritch beings that have roamed the earth before humanity, only to be subdued by frequent showings of suffering and sacrifice. The puppeteers have basically taken away any form of control that these people have in order to keep the Ancient Ones from losing theirs. Now, in The Mouth of Madness, the equivalent of this scenario is when Trent and the editor named Linda Stiles actually try to find Sutter Kane. When they drive to the location Trent has found, they get lost and repeat a stretch of road over and over and over again. With Stiles on the wheel, she begins to have this fever dream as her surroundings shift and warp into the town where Sutter Kane's stories take place. As the puppeteers pull the strings of the group of friends, we have Linda Stiles literally having the steering wheel taken from her control. This loss of control acts like a bridge between having that sense of normalcy taken from you to the next step in the process of the end of the world. But when you feel helpless and nothing you do matters, are there any other options options available to you. In The Mist, a cosmic horror staple based on Stephen King's novel, we get to see how this unravels. In it, we follow a group of people in a grocery store going through everyday life. However, when a mysterious mist rolls in, they become trapped as more people come rushing in to take shelter. After seeing what unearthly beings occupy the mist, the people inside the convenience store break down, shaken by the new reality unfolding before their eyes. This breakdown marks the next step in the process of an apocalypse, societal collapse. We get to see a microcosm of society as people inside the grocery store begin forming different factions. Each of these factions begin vying for control of the grocery store, believing that they can restore some semblance of order inside. But, like I said, normalcy and control are gone now. In an attempt to recover these, the people inside the grocery store flock to those who could offer it to them. The largest faction we have inside the store is led by the Mrs. Carmody. The members of this group aren't really the problem if you ask me. That's because what little control they have left, they've already surrendered to Mrs. Carmody, a person who was already unstable even before the mist arrived. As night comes and the convenience store is attacked, Mrs. Carmody is spared by one of the beings, pushing her further into insanity and her followers into a blind fervor. The second largest group was led by a guy named Brent. But the thing is, they weren't even there for the attack. That's because a few hours after the mist fell, they left to prove that the mist was harmless. When our protagonist David Drayton asked them what if they were wrong, he implied that it might be better to leave that way. They were so bound by their version of reality that they refused to live in another. Because of that, the smallest faction led by David was left under the mercy of Mrs. Carmody's group, which was basically the whole convenience store versus 6 people, one of which was David's son. In the cabin in the woods, this moment of collapse was seen when the friend group split up after having the athlete exposed to some gas. As the de facto leader, he then takes back his initial suggestion of sticking together and tells the group to split up. In the movie In the Mouth of Madness, the collapse is seen when they first visit the church where they believe Sutter Kane to be. There, we see 2 distinct groups of people, the ones who were possessed by the old ones and the ones who were not. These 2 groups are what lead to societal collapse. However, like so many moments in this movie, there's a twist to all of this. You see, in the background, even before they leave to find Sutter Kane, we already get to see the effects of those who have read Sutter Kane's books and have become possessed. Many of the steps we've gone through have already been happening throughout the movie, but with everything in disarray, all this leads to the penultimate step of the apocalypse. When everything around you is turning into this distorted version of reality, and those around you have seemingly lost their minds, there's a natural outcome to all of this. The 4th step of the end of the world is isolation. In the movie Bird Box, we follow Mallory Hayes. Right from the start of the movie, we already see that she has isolated herself from society. However, for her sister, it was a personal mission of hers to get her to connect with other people. In an attempt to do this, she voluntarily takes her to the hospital to get her regular checkup for her pregnancy. On their way home, disaster strikes as the demonic entities begin descending upon their city. The sisters attempt to flee, however, Mallory's sister happens to see one of these entities. This then pushes her to look for ways to end her life. Once she's successful, Mallory becomes frozen in place, only to be rescued by one of the occupants of a nearby house. But Mallory's further pushed to the edge when the woman who rescues her also sees one of these entities. She immediately ends her life, leaving Mallory stuck with her husband inside the house. After the initial wave of chaos is over, the places that they believed was shelter has now become a prison. Now, whether they wanted to or not, they are now isolated from one another, unable to leave in fear of seeing one of these demonic beings. Now, the thing about their separation from others is that even though they're inside the group, they're still separated from humanity in general. The world has literally become fragments of humanity. Add to that the unstable group dynamics one can experience in certain groups, it's still very easy to feel isolated even when you're with other people. Mallory being alone in the start is almost the same as her feeling alone with other people. But it's not just her, it's everyone. The husband of Mallory's rescuer is hostile to everyone as he grieves for his wife. The 2 youngest of the group have partnered together and have forsaken them. The owner of the house volunteers to do some reconnaissance, only to wind up lifeless himself. It's the same with all the others, with some aspect of their being preventing them from integrating with the group. Charlie, the most knowledgeable of them regarding the entities, suggests that they have been present since the beginning of humanity. However, he does leave it ambiguous as to whether humanity has been able to overcome them in the past. As time passes, they lose more members one by one. 5 years later, Mallory and another survivor, Tom, have now formed a family with Mallory's child and the child of one of their deceased companions. humans. They receive a message on the radio informing them that there is a colony of humans in a safe place. But in order to reach them, they have to ride a boat down a dangerous river. Mallory decides against this, subjecting her family to the same kind of isolation she was experiencing at the beginning. The very same kind of isolation that made her miserable and unable to connect with other people. David's group experienced the same kind of isolation when Brent left the store. The group of Mrs. Carmody was just so volatile that anything could happen while they were vastly outnumbered. In the cabin in the woods, the group of friends were isolated from the outside world after they passed the barrier, leaving them helpless against the vast array of eldritch and demonic entities the puppeteers had. But if we go deeper, we will find that the fool was slowly being isolated from the others as he was the only one free from the control of the puppeteers. As we start in the mouth of madness with the apocalypse nearing its end, we spend vast amounts of time seeing John Trent being isolated. The first time is in the cell of the mental institution. The second is when he becomes trapped in Hobbs End, Sutter Kane's fictional town. And the third is when he makes it back to the real world as he knew it. As a viewer, I couldn't help but feel the same kind of dread that they had during these moments. Especially it's these kinds of moments that make us feel like it's already the end of the world. It's these kinds of moments that rob us of any kind of meaning. But wait, there's more. The final step of the end of the world isn't really for the characters in these movies. It's for us. The endings of these movies are also vastly different, but they do have one thing in common. They all offer us something to examine. By the end of Cabin in the Woods, we see the Fool and the Virgin put an end to the puppeteers. However, by doing so, they cause the apocalypse. They're left wondering if they did the right thing, but decide that if sacrificing the innocent is needed to make the world run, then what's the point? Right then and there, a giant hand bursts forth from the earth to destroy the world. In the ending of The Mist, we see David and his group escape after killing Mrs. Carmody. We see the aftermath of the mist on their town, with a giant eldritch colossus passing over them without a care. When their gas runs out, David takes it upon himself to spare the others the pain of being devoured by the eldritch entities that surround them. Using the pistol, he takes his group out one by one, leaving him alive as the bullets have run out. It's only then that the military passes by with the refugees on their trucks as they flee to safety. All David can do now is scream in agony for what he has done. Their chance of survival was literally seconds away from them. However, their loss of hope ruined any chance of survival. In Bird Box, that's where this banger line from Tom comes in. He says, "Surviving is not living. Life is more than just what is. It's what could be, what you could make it. You need to promise them dreams that may never come true. You need to love them knowing that you may lose them at any second. They deserve dreams. They deserve love. They deserve hope. They deserve a mother." It's because of this that Mallory decides to break the cycle of isolation that had plagued her family. She decides to take the kids on the journey to the shelter, and after having to brave many obstacles blindfolded, they finally reach their goal, a school for the blind that was converted into a safe haven. There, her kids were finally able to connect with others, just as she has finally connected with her kids. Unlike the other two stories, instead of despair, we actually found hope. However, in an apocalypse full of cosmic horror, that's more of the oddity instead of the norm. By the end of In the Mouth Madness, we get to see how John Trent spirals into isolation and madness. First, he attacks the readers of Sutter Kane and those possessed, and after the outside world is overrun by the old ones, he is left alive to stumble into a movie theater where an adaptation of Sutter Kane's final book is playing. There, we hear everything at the beginning of the movie, implying that John Trent was written by Sutter Kane all along, altering his reality forever. All this plays into our fifth and final step for the apocalypse, a challenge to reality. There's this fitting quote from Linda Stiles, the companion of John Trent, where she simply says, "A reality is just what we tell each other it is." Each of these stories reflect different truths about our reality right now. They call on the audience to examine these truths and challenge what we know our reality to be. The endings might seem hopeless, but that's not really the case for the audience. Not yet, at least. This is actually part of a series I'm working on called Comprehending Cosmic Horror. If you like what you saw, there's another video right here. Thank you for watching, and if you want to support the channel, please like and please subscribe.